Hi guys!
Hey, hello, how are you?
Today we wanted to take some time to talk to you a little bit about ViaCo, why we started the company, what challenges we can help with, and, most importantly, the underlying philosophy behind everything we do.
Before we start though, we wanted to tell you, well, it's just about explaining to you who we are also, right? Why did we found the company, etc. So my name is Jesus, and this is my partner Anastasia. And do you want to start by explaining to them
Yeah.
what we were doing beforehand?
So my career actually started in recruitment, and then I started leaning more heavily into the people and culture side of things, where I got to see the innermost workings at some of the best companies in Sydney, and that was pretty exciting for me.
For me, I was doing psychometric testing, so like team building, team assessments, things like that, helping people to understand each other, understand how people worked. Um, and it was there that basically we would run these workshops on building communication, doing really good communication between the team. And after the workshop, they'd be like, okay, well, now we really trust each other, we can communicate well, but still we have a problem with making decisions. We have a problem with the actual strategy that we're following, or we can tell each other now what we think, but what we think is that things are going bad, let's just say, for example.
And it was interesting because Jesus and I would come home and start talking and debriefing about our work day and what we found exciting. And we started to figure out that, hey, actually, there is something that could be done better. Even though these were some of the best companies already doing a lot of the really good practices, we started to think and we were like, what's that point of leverage? What's that thing that could make the biggest difference?
Because everybody was trying to affect behavior, maybe they're trying to affect the customers, changing the behavior to buy their product, or behavior within a team or within the business to sell better or create something. And when it came down to it, even though there are sort of we started to study the levels of the psyche, what's happening, how is behavior created in the mind, right? And it's really interesting, but it all comes down to kind of understanding how to work at the level of belief.
That's right. The level of belief is so important to learn how to work with because that is what ultimately affects behavior. Take Coca-Cola, for example. When they've done a lot of branding and marketing around associating their company with feelings of happiness and joy. They've even associated themselves with Santa Claus and the whole Christmas holiday. So that's something that they've been doing consistently for many years. And the fact that they're targeting our feelings already is a deeper layer of the psyche, like Jesus was mentioning. But still, not everyone is buying Coca-Cola, right? There are people who are adamantly against it even. And so when you try to analyze and understand why that is the case, you begin to realize that actually the biggest difference is their deep-rooted beliefs. For example, one of the beliefs could be that, hey, actually Coca-Cola is unhealthy. Now, I need to put a little disclaimer here because some people might still think it's unhealthy, but because it brings them joy and everything else, they drink it, right? But I'm talking about the deep-rooted belief. So if ultimately the person thinks, no matter what, I will not put bad things into my body, I want to live a healthy life, and I know that Coca-Cola is unhealthy, then they're not going to buy it.
The thing is that this might be counterintuitive, but as we went down and down and down to understand, okay, some people target reasons. Some people tell you reasons why you should buy the product. Other people tell you feelings, like Coca-Cola is doing feelings. So that's kind of a little bit deeper in the psyche, but beliefs are much almost many levels deeper. And it becomes more simple the deeper you go into what we call almost a binary response. Is this true or not true? Your body actually detects whether something is resonating or not resonating. And learning to work at this level got us to see that, oh my God, we can make so much change in behavior, in our clients, in people, when we're starting to teach them and show them, hey, let's work at this level to create a strategy, at this level to create a product or a campaign. Now things were clicking much faster because the more simple you get, the more behavior change that you can affect. It's almost like a domino effect. Very interesting work that we started doing, right?
Mm-hmm. And it kind of brings up an interesting point, right? I think when you start to play around at this level, at the level of belief, you also realize how important free will is. To go back to the Coca-Cola example, no matter how much marketing, branding, convincing the company might try to do, ultimately what you believe and what you choose to believe in is what goes, right? So the ultimate, weapon against every branding and marketing that's out there is your free will. And it kind of leads you into authenticity as well. So authenticity is kind of like not lying to yourself about things. So for example, let's take the previous Coca-Cola example, where somebody knows that Coca-Cola is bad, right? And they tell people, yeah, I'm gonna quit, I don't wanna drink it and all of this. But really they're lying to themselves, because deep down they get a rush, they enjoy it, and that's the core belief that's driving the behavior, right? And so sometimes when you go into the areas of, for example, in individual literature, people talk a lot about, hey, visualization or even manifestation. Repeat something until you become it. And it's not quite that. You have to repeat something until you can believe it, but also there's other ways to make yourself believe it. Because no matter how many times you say I'm a millionaire, if you're broke, you're not gonna believe it. Your authenticity is gonna interfere with things.
So how do you work at this level? This is what we started to do. We realized that how do we get an authentic conversation going? For example, like within our teams in business, right? Like you've got your team. Imagine that you set them a target of a 30% increase in sales, right? And how do you get to have a conversation of whether or not they actually believe that that's going to be achieved? Because if they do, then their actions and their behavior is going to reflect strategies that will get you to that achievement. But you might actually be putting up, a 30% increase in sales, or this year we're going to do this, or anyway, you might put up whatever you want in your strategy, and people might not be telling you, but inside they might not believe it. They might not believe that that's what's actually going to happen, or that's not what they want, and the communication is not happening. I mean, how many times we've seen this happen where the slide says it, the leader is saying it, and
logically it's been squared,
and it's making, and everyone's nodding, everyone's like saying yes, yes, but when you get down to that level of belief, actually they're like, yeah, no, not really, no. And so working at this level requires a new set of skills. It requires new knowledge. You need to understand, how do I navigate? Because it's not just a level where reason, where just talking stuff is going to work, to have that kind of like connection at a deeper level of what people actually believe is. And the last thing is new skills, new tools to work at that level. Almost like the leader's toolkit. And it's the most important thing that you can do as a leader, because it's almost like for every let's say piece of effort that you put into creating let's say a strategy or an action, some directions, if you put in energy into shifting people's belief structure, now you get this like massive leverage and massive changes in behavior. You have to do both, but it's just that most people
forget about the other
part. They're trying to do the other part, but they don't have the right knowledge, skills, or tools, and this is what we provide with VIA.
So let's make it more tangible. Let's bring it down to earth. What do these tools, knowledge, and skills look like? Well, we've spent time designing programs that build on each other, such that you can, use them at any stage of your journey as a leader.
There are three kind of like main stages. There's working with others, there's working as a team, and then there's like working as a whole organization, right? But all of the stages start with the individual being really authentic. So you could say this kind of preliminary, and most of the stuff you're going to find on self-awareness or self-improvement is going to get you to the point where you're like, well, now I'm being true to myself.
There's a lot of resources out for this. So, if you haven't done that yet, go there first, because that's where we start. This point of, hey, you're already authentic, you already communicate very truthfully and transparently. Now we can figure out, how do we do that with others? That's where our work begins, with at least one other person.
We have a program called our partner program, which is really about, it's available to anybody that's co-working with someone, that might be in partnership with someone, even if you're a couple, or even if you're just best friends, or even if it's just your buddy that you're working with at work, whatever it is.
I think you're jumping ahead. Let's just tell you guys that the program at its core is about building trust, because when you start to work with one other person, you need to build the trust, right? So first, you're by yourself, you've become authentic, then you introduce one more person. What's the most fundamental thing you need? Trust, right? And that's what the program is
We
designed
started by
around.
teaching you a communications framework. It's just a simple way to build trust with people that gets to the root of how to make it so that your relationship with someone else is actually complementary. You know, complementary means that how do our styles merge in a way that we create more, you know? And it's very interesting because nature kind of has made us to work with others in this way.
So we're leveraging like cognitive diversity, the different types of brains and how people work together, and bring them together in that program. And then the next stage is what we call the team performance program, but it could still be for two people. It's just about what's the next steps. Now you've built a foundation of trust. What do you need next? Well, usually what happens when you really trust each other, you start doing things, and then you encounter some kind of a problem. That's what teams form around, solving a problem. And so what you're going to need to do when you encounter a problem is transform that problem. And actually, what the coolest part of this work that we've discovered is the biggest problems that a team faces are actually the biggest opportunities that they have. It's almost like that's where their talent lies, and you just need to, you know, uncover it and learn to work with the problem in the first place.
If you already work in a team or are leading one, you're probably doing this naturally. You're sort of like, the team eventually solves the problem. We're trying to teach you the fundamentals. You know, as you get to mastery in leadership, you have to kind of like go back to fundamentals. That's what defines someone that's just really good at. They do the basics really well. So we are running you through those basics in a way that you really understand the process of transforming these challenges or blockages into solutions, you know, into forward momentum, of using that energy that's trapped in this block, in this problem, boom, with your team all together, transforming it into a solution. This part is really cool because people start to sometimes almost like complete each other's sentences. If you're doing well. It revolves all around entering flow state together, or using the higher capacities of the mind and doing it as a group. So it requires a bit of it's a bit of an art now. Now this is a skill that you as a leader, as you get into that management position or a director role, you kind of like have to start to develop. How do I get a whole group of people up to use their higher part of the brain to solve problems? You know, all of their neocortex and the prefrontal cortex, which we'll teach you all about in the course.
So now we've got already a good foundation of trust, and we've learned how to work with problems. What's kind of the epitome of it, the final step? Well, it's aligning everyone towards a common purpose. And we do this in our organizations program, where we create a single source of strategy. Now, you might be thinking, hey, well, when I brought in another person in the first place, I already had an idea of what I wanted to do or a purpose, and that's really true. What you want to do at this stage now is almost refine and define such that the way we've designed is it mirrors your physiology. And why is that important? It's important because that allows information to be embedded at almost a subconscious level. For example, when you're giving your strategy, right, or there's a new initiative in your organization, what will happen is there's a lot of momentum and excitement for the first few weeks, maybe months if you're lucky, and after a while it dies down. But with this master blueprint that we call, the information gets embedded so deep that even though it's not front of mind in your conscious awareness, it's still guiding those decisions towards the right outcome, almost subconsciously.
Man, this is all about it's working at the level of belief, right? So it's about connecting the goal that you might have, or finding out what is the right goal and connecting it all of the way to the subconscious mind and saying yes, and it's resonating. And then doing that across the whole organization. so that seeing how all of your goals are interlinked. This, we do call it a master blueprint, because there's something in our brains that's traditionally used to seeing landscapes, maps of the terrain. So when you see your whole strategy laid out in front of you, not a slide deck, not a document that
Point
you have
by
to
point,
fill.
yeah.
No. You do it in a way that is natural for the brain to assimilate a whole amount of information, how it's all connected. Now you have this beautiful single source of truth that everybody can understand. So people can be like, I can see I'm here and the job that I'm doing is here, and this is how it fits into the whole. Now I'm aligned. I can align myself to it. And
The interconnectedness of it.
That's right. Yeah. And so this would work for 100 people, 200 people, or 50 or 2 even, but like massive amount of people can align using a single source of truth, which really cuts down that layer of, it's really tough sometimes for the managers not to get the right amount of connection to all of the employees. And so we're really trying to streamline that process, right? And really empower the managers in the process too.
So as you can see, each step builds on each other. First, we've got trust, which is the partner program. Then we've got transforming problems, which is the team program. And then building that single source of strategy, which is the organization program. And all of that together
Yeah, that's one powerful way, we call it, one powerful way. One, because you'll all be like acting as one with a lot of trust. Powerful because you learn how to solve problems, and so that become really powerful when you are able to do this really well. And way is because now you have a purpose. You have a single source of truth that's giving you the way.
That's right.
And if you are, I just want to share, if you're a founder or an owner, an investor, somebody that has a company, that owns a company, you'd want to look into all of this work as if it's infrastructure, right? So as if like, hey, it's not a one-off, but when you reach to that level and you're thinking about your business as a whole, it's almost like setting up the executive infrastructure, from how decisions are made across the company. And so you're playing with all of these elements across time to build a really solid backbone, to the executive part, to the executives in your company. So this is what VIA is. This is what we do.
So if you found this interesting, you can always find more information on our website, wearevia.co. And if you have any questions, let us know.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking to you soon.